Hello, in today's session we are going to learn about Amazon Web Services. Why are we learning Amazon Web Services? Amazon Web Services is a cloud service provider and it has one of the largest market shares in the total market. As you can see on this pie chart, Amazon holds the largest market share, second becoming the first, and the second is Microsoft, then Google, and there are many other players as well. So Amazon is the most popular, and the reason being its early entry into the market, as well as cost effectiveness and a very good user interface for interacting and creating instances. So let's start understanding what Amazon Web Services actually is. We'll start with understanding what is the cloud. Then we'll see at what Amazon Web Services is and its advantages. Then we'll have a look at how to set up an AWS account. Then we'll see how to spin up an EC2 instance using AWS. Finally, we'll see how to connect to an EC2 instance in Ubuntu, in Windows, as well as the AWS console. Also, we'll see the best practices you should follow when you are accessing EC2 instances. So let's start with understanding what a cloud is. A cloud is not something which you see in the sky. A cloud is actually a collection of servers on the internet on which you can do the processing instead of processing on your local computer. So the cloud is actually just the internet. Over the internet, you can connect to other computers. Now, if you create a cluster of computers and you connect to it to do the computation which you cannot do on your local computer, then that is called a cloud. So the formal definition would be cloud refers to servers that are accessed over the internet and the software and databases that run on the servers. Cloud servers are present in data centers all over the world. By using cloud computing, and companies don't have to manage physical servers themselves or run software applications on their own machines. So there is a cluster of computers which is managed by an organization like AWS, and you do not have to set up your own computers when you are starting out a venture. You can use their computers and scale it up very easily. So as I said earlier, cloud is not that different from the internet. Using the internet, a computer can connect to another computer utilizing the computational resources and data storage. So that is possible via internet. But if you create a structured set of remote computers, like make a collection of a lot of computers and expose it so that anyone can pay on demand and access those computers, then that is called the cloud. Also, the collection of such computers kept in a physical location is referred to as a data center. So it's not actually a data center, it's actually a computation center where a lot of computers are kept which can be accessed via paying some fees. So what does the cloud broadly consist of? So there is the clients which utilize the cloud resources, which is us. As a user, as a company, you are the clients who are going to access the resources which are provided by the cloud. Then there is the internet, which connects the users to the cloud servers. Next, there is the servers themselves, computers which can run your applications. So you can set up an application like a web server, or you can train your machine learning models on the cloud on very powerful graphics processing units, GPUs, which are present in the cloud. Then there is the database itself. So there are dedicated computers for storing and retrieving information. They are optimized to store large quantities of data and retrieve them very fast. And then there is the applications. So there are programs which will help you in the smooth operation of the cloud. They will allow you to easily connect to the cloud servers, ensure authentication, security, and and it will ensure you can easily scale up your application. So that is what is ensured by some applications which are running on the cloud. So let's start with understanding what exactly Amazon Web Services is. So Amazon Web Services is a cloud provider, and it maintains its own network connected hardware. As you can see on the screen, it is present all over the world. It has a lot of data centers around the world, and you can use those data centers. You can loan out some computers or services provided by those data centers. These data centers are actually called regions. So you can see there is the Mumbai region, Ohio region in the US, and the Beijing region present in China, and so on. It has been AWS has been actively adding more and more regions so that there is a lot of connectivity all across the globe. So what are the advantages of using these cloud services? So advantages is always comparative, and over here we are comparing with buying your own computer. So you can buy your own computer and set it up on your local machines, or you can just loan out a computer from AWS. So what are the advantages of loaning a computer on AWS instead of buying your own local server? So the very first advantage is you pay only for the servers you use for the time you use it for. This means that, let's say right now you have the need of using a server which is very powerful. Let's say it has 8 GPUs, which is very costly to buy. If you try to buy it now, depending upon the GPU, the cost may go from 5 lakh INR to easily 10 to 15 lakh INR. And let's say you only want to use it for 5 hours. So you won't buy out a computer which is so costly just for using it for 5 hours. So on AWS, you can lease out a computer and pay only for the 5 hours. And you might pay around just INR 3000 rupees to use it for 5 hours. So that's the advantage of using AWS. Next, let's say you want to, for a short burst of time, use a lot of computers. Now, how do you do that? In real world, it will take you a lot of time to buy out the computers, then set it up, and then you'll have to maintain those computers even when you are not using them. But on AWS, you can easily scale your application if you have a higher demand. This usually happens when you are running web servers. It can happen that during some instances of the day, there is a very peak demand in which you require 100 computers, but during the night, the demand is low and you require only one computer. So you can take advantage of AWS over here and pay for the 100 computers only for the peak durations. Next, the advantage of AWS is that AWS guarantees nearly 100% uptime. So you do not have to take care that your computer is always online by yourself. If you, let's say, buy out 100 computers and let's say the electricity goes down, you need to set up a generator. Also, it might happen that there is a network outage. So how do you take care of that? So you will have to have multiple different ISPs, internet service providers, who provide you the internet access. So even if one is down, the other remains. And this adds up the cost of running your own local servers. But on AWS, you do not have to take care of all of these things. AWS ensures that even if there is a big earthquake, your web servers will always remain 100% uptime. It does so by taking a lot of precautions, ensuring that there are multiple data centers in a single region and all of them have a lot of backups. So these are the advantages of using AWS. We'll have a look at each of them in more detail as well as some other advantages of using AWS. So just now I said that AWS ensures reliability. There is a 100% uptime guarantee by AWS. And how does it do so? So we already saw that AWS has a lot of regions across the globe. So AWS regions are large and widely dispersed into separate geographic locations all around the globe. Availability zones are distinct locations within an AWS region that are engineered to be isolated from failures in other availability zones. What it means is that inside a single region, there are multiple availability zones. Each of the availability zone is connected to each of them by using low latency fiber connectivity. So the data transfer between these availability zones is very fast. Now, to ensure that even if one availability zone goes down, let's say there is an earthquake, but one availability zone that goes down, but the other availability zone won't go down because AWS ensures that they are even built on different tectonic plates. Also, there can be a power outage in one availability zone, but on the other availability zone, that won't happen. By ensuring multiple duplicate copies of the same machine in all availability zones, even if one of the availability zones is down, the others will be up, and you will not face any problem when you're trying to connect to your computers. So this is the advantage of having multiple availability zones inside a single region. Next, there is the massive economies of scale. So if you buy 100 computers and you are using only those computers for 1 hour in a day, you are wasting the remaining 23 hours. But on AWS, as these 100 computers are shared between different users, AWS can achieve higher economies of scale. So even if AWS has 100 computers, they can share those computers with hundreds of users to ensure maximum usage of their computers. So if they can maximize the utilization of the computer and hence reduce the cost of buying those computers, and then they can pass on these savings to the customers. So they save a lot, and hence the cost of leasing out those computers goes down. So that is one advantage of AWS. Next, as I told earlier, you can easily scale up. So if you have a web server and let's say suddenly your website became very popular, if you are creating your own local computers, then you'll have to run to the shop, get a server as soon as possible, and then set up your server and then connect it on the internet. Even if you do it as fast as possible, it might take days to get your server up. On AWS, you can do that within minutes. They already have a lot of computers present in the data center. You just have to click, loan them out. Already on AWS, they are set up for different configurations. So you can just click, get the server, deploy your code, and that's it. Within minutes, you'll have many more servers to handle the unexpected capacity. Also, they have AWS Lambda. So they have created a serverless approach to APIs. It means that there are thousands of servers, and when a person tries to access an API, only for that duration, your API will be served to that person. Otherwise, you are not loaning out a standalone computer. This ensures that if there are thousands of computers, it can be shared. Those thousand computers can be shared with tens of thousands of users who are not able to access those servers, but they can create APIs. And if their APIs are being hit upon by different users, only for that duration, the server will serve the particular client. This ensures that even if, let's say, there are tens of thousands of API hits, which is an unexpected capacity, are being done per second, there is no issue. You do not need to create more servers as the AWS Lambda has a lot of capacity. And even if there are a lot of API hits, the AWS Lambda can take care of it. Also, you only pay for the number of API hits you get on AWS Lambda. So if no one uses your APIs, then you pay nothing. Also, AWS Lambda has 1 million requests free per month, which is a huge amount. To go beyond using 1 million requests per month, you'll have to become a very large website, a very popular website. Hence, using AWS Lambda is a really cost effective method. As I've already told it multiple times, whenever you need, let's say you are in a corporate and you want to buy your own server, there are a lot of red tapes. You have to find a vendor who will give you the corresponding configuration of the server at the lowest cost. Then you have to wait for the vendor to procure the parts. Then the vendor sets up the machine and then they give it back to you. It might take even months to buy one server. But on AWS, you just click on a button and you have a server with you. So that is a very big advantage of using AWS when you want to do production at a very high speed. One thing which we have not talked about is AWS provides a lot of security components by default. So to ensure that your web servers are secured, you can just use the AWS applications to ensure that there is no DDoS attack, to ensure that no one is able to access your computer if you don't want them to. You can create private clusters inside AWS which can be connected from only your local computer. No one else on the internet will be able to connect to your computers. So that secures your computers a lot, and AWS provides all of these security measures by default. There is one more advantage of using AWS, which is speed. Let's say you have deployed a website. Now, people all across the globe will try to access your website. That website is, let's say, deployed on your local computer. So, if someone is sitting in US and your server is deployed in Mumbai, they will have to traverse the entire distance via multiple router hops, and finally they'll ping your server. The server will respond back and send the data back from Mumbai to US. This will take a lot of time and the user experience is diminished because your website, it takes a lot of time to load. AWS has a lot of edge locations. What it means is that it keeps the copy of your website on all the servers which are at the edge locations. Now, if a person in US tries to access your website, they will not hit your server in Mumbai. They will hit the edge location server which is present in US itself. So it will take a fraction of a second to reach the edge location and get back the data. So that is a very high advantage in speed by providing edge locations. Also, AWS has a very high connectivity between its different regions. So if you want to transfer data from one region to another, AWS has set up fiber optical cables across its data centers so you can transfer data at a very high speed. So that's it regarding the advantages of AWS. I hope you see the advantages of using AWS over the conventional buying your own servers. So now let's set up your AWS account. So for the signing up process, the sign up process is pretty simple. You have to just fill in the information like your email address, password, account name, and your standard details like your address and so on. But one thing you'll also require is a valid debit or credit card. So a valid debit card is Visa. RuPay usually does not work, or any credit card will work. So you can directly set up a credit card or set up a valid debit card like a Visa or a MasterCard to be able to access the AWS account. When you create your account for the first time, you get 12 months of free tier access. In this free tier, there are a lot of applications or services which are provided by AWS. After you have filled up the details, you will see the following page that your service sign up is almost complete, but they are authorizing, they are authenticating what the information you have entered is correct or not, and it usually takes 24 hours for the authentication to be completed. If it takes more time, you can contact the AWS customer support and they can verify the account for you. Also, you have to make sure that all of the information provided during the sign up process has been correctly input. Once this is done, you will be able to access all the AWS services. There are some services which might require further permissions, and as and when required, AWS will prompt you to ask for the permission, and it might take a day or two to get the permission verified. For example, if you want to use a GPU, graphics processing unit service, then you might need one more day to, to be able to get the permission to start a GPU service. Okay. So there are a lot of services on AWS, and we'll be just having a look at the Amazon EC2 service. So EC2 service is actually you can lease out a server on the remote Amazon data centers. So Amazon provides a lot of services like databases or the Lambda, Amazon Lambda, which we talked about earlier. Those do not allow you to directly connect to the server. In Amazon EC2, you can connect to the server and use it like it's your own computer. So that is, you have a lot of freedom when using Amazon EC2. So that is what we are going to do. We are going to spin up an EC2 instance. So first, go to your dashboard. So when you open the AWS page, on the very top, you'll see services. When you click on that, you can go to compute and choose the EC2. After you do that, you can click on launch instance over here. If the button is not available, you can go to instances running and then click on launch instances, which you get at the top right. When you click on the launch instance button, the first step you get is to choose an Amazon machine image. Amazon machine images are pre-configured machines with an OS along with relevant modules installed. So you have a pre-installed OS, and let's say you are doing machine learning, so you'll have all relevant machine learning libraries pre-installed on that Amazon machine image. Or if you are doing a web development project, then you'll have all the relevant web development libraries required already installed on the Amazon web machine image. In the free tier, you only have access to some of the Amazon machine images, and for this course, we'll be continuing with Ubuntu 20.04. So choose Ubuntu 20.04 or whichever latest Ubuntu version is present, and then click on select. Next, after you click on the Amazon machine image, the next step is choosing an instance type. In the free tier, you have access to only one instance type, which is the T2 Micro. The T2 Micro has one core and it has a RAM of 1 GB. So there are multiple types of instance which you can uh, lease out over here depending upon your requirement. If you are doing machine learning, then you would need to choose an instance type which supports GPUs, and T2 Micro does not support GPUs. If you are doing creating a web server and you are expecting a lot of clients, then you should accordingly choose the number of CPU cores you want and the amount of RAM you want, which you can check over here by looking at the different instance types. In the free tier, we only have access to T2 Micro, and for this session, we'll choose the T2 Micro and then continue. So you can go to next, configure instance details, where you can choose the amount of hard disk space you want and other details. But for this session, we'll just review and launch. We'll go with the default values of all the other parameters of instance. Once you do review instance, you'll have to just check whether the details you have entered is correct or not. After you click on launch the instance, you will get this dialog box. This dialog box asks you to create a key pair value. When you are trying to access your Amazon remote server, you need to use a password so that only you can connect to the machine. But instead of using a password which is created by you, Amazon asks you to create a key pair. You can think of a key pair as a very big password which you'll get in a file. So if you have never created a key pair on Amazon, then you will be asked to create a new key pair. But if you have already created a key pair file, then you can use the existing key pair to connect to your instance as well. So if you choose create a new key pair, you will get the option to download the key pair file, and then you just launch the instance. You'll also have to put a name to your key pair file, which you can put over here. Once you download, remember to download the key pair, because if you do not download the key pair, you'll never be able to access the remote server, and you do not get the option to download these key pair in the future. So remember to download and store the key pair in a very secure location. After you do that, click on launch. So it might take a bit of time to launch the instance, but after some time, you will be able to see this screen. Congratulations, you have launched your first EC2 instance. So yes, now we have leased out a remote server. But how do we connect to that EC2 instance? Depending upon the OS you are using, whether you are using Ubuntu or Windows, the method will be different. So first of all, for all of independent of your OS system, you'll have to open the EC2 dashboard. So you can click on the services at the top left and in the drop down choose EC2. You will see the screen. After that, click on instances. So if you click on these instances over here, you will be able to see all the instances which are running currently. In the instances, you can see a lot of details about your instance, like your instance type, what's the instance state right now, what is your public IP address, and so on. Click on your instance, choose your instance, and then click on the connect button, which is at the top right. After you do that, you will get a window which looks like this. If you want to connect to your EC2 instance via your browser itself, you can choose EC2 Instance Connect and then click directly on Connect. You do not need to change the username because by default the username is Ubuntu. If you click on Connect, you will see a new window on which a terminal will open up. So that is how you can connect to your remote instance via your browser. So this is one method of connecting to your EC2 instance. This is independent of the OS you are using. Let's say you are on Ubuntu and you want to connect to your remote server by using SSH. So SSH is a protocol which allows you to connect to your remote server and open up a shell terminal where you can execute commands on the remote server. You have to follow the following methods to connect to the to the remote server. So you have your private key file, the PEM file which you already downloaded. You change the permissions of the AWS session and then you execute this command to on your terminal to connect to the remote server. Once you do that, you'll be able to see the same screen as the so you'll see a similar screen in your terminal when you execute this command. In Windows, if you want to connect to the remote server, you have to do a few extra steps. First, you have to convert the downloaded PEM file to PPK file using PuttyGen. So if you install Putty, which is the application you will use to connect to the server, PuttyGen will be automatically installed. You can use this PuttyGen to convert the PEM file to PPK file, and then in Putty, you can provide the location of the PPK file to connect to the remote server. So when you open the PuttyGen, this is how it will look like. You click on load and then in file types, so a pop-up will open up. In file types, you choose all file types, otherwise you won't be able to see the PEM file, and then choose the PEM file you downloaded from Amazon. After you do that, your key will be loaded and then you can save the private key which will be in the PPK format. So after loading, this is how it will look like. Save the private key, and if it asks you for a passphrase, you should set a password, but for now it is fine if you just say that yes, saving the key without a passphrase. So you do not password lock your key file, you just let it be. Once you have your PPK file, in Putty you can provide the location for the PPK file. Also, you need to provide the IP address of your remote server. In host, you type out the IP address, and in the file location, you provide the location for PPK and you will be able to connect. So if you open Putty, this is where you put the IP address, and then inside SSH, you click on auth and you browse over here and put the private key file. Once you do that, click on open and you'll connect to the remote server. So that is how you can connect to your remote server and directly start using it. Now the next thing to do is the best practices to use when using an EC2 instance. This is very important because your EC2 instance is being always been tried to hacked upon. If you have kept the access, you have kept the SSH access to everyone on the internet, there will be some computers which will keep on trying to brute force into your computer. Once, if they are able to brute force into your computer, then they'll hack your computer and start trying to brute force into other people's computer by using your computational resources. This way their power exponentially grows up, and the hackers are able to crack a lot of EC2 instances. So these are some of the best practices you should follow when you are using an EC2 instance to ensure that your computer does not get hacked upon. So first, as I talked about earlier, there are automated scripts which keep on trying to attack your computer using brute force algorithms. They use already hacked computers to hack other computers, and it is difficult to trace who actually started out the program. Also, these hacked computers can be used to orchestrate a DDoS attack. Now, what is a DDoS attack? So, let's say you have created a web server and there are a lot of people who are trying to access your website. These hacked computers will behave like real users and try to access the resources of your web server. Now, as these hacked computers are a lot more than than the capacity of your web server will go down if it is not able to keep up with the requests from these hacked computers. So it becomes a fight between your web server and these hacked computers, and because there are a lot of hacked computers, you cannot serve all of them and your server will crash. This is a way in which you can crash out a web server on the internet. So you can take certain measures to reduce the likeliness of these attacks. So first method is whitelisting specific IPs. When you click on your EC2 instance and on the instance ID, you will be able to see such a screen. Over there, click on security and then click on the security groups. When you go to the security groups, you will be able to see all the rules, the inbound rules of your server. This means that what kind of protocols you allow while connecting to your server. So over there, instead of whitelisting all IPs, you whitelist only specific IPs. This means that you just remove the 0000 which is present by default, and inside when you click on this drop down, you will find my IP and just click on this my IP. That will ensure that only your computer can SSH into the remote server. So no amount of brute force is possible because no one else on the internet can connect to your computer. So this is one method in which you can stop hackers from brute forcing into your computer. After you have made the changes, always remember to save the rules. These are some other key points which you should remember. Always keep your PM files safe. Never transfer your PM files over the internet. If you just copy and paste it on your remote server, then you should assume that your PM file has been hacked, because the routers in between will be able to see your PM files, and then they can use the PM files to connect to the remote server. Do not even think of sending it on WhatsApp or Gmail or anywhere, because then they can be hacked. Also, always ensure that your IP address is whitelist. Never whitelist all IPs, because the computers on the internet will be able to brute force into your computer, and that will compromise your data. Now, if in the worst possible case that a server is compromised, immediately shut down the server and update the authentication of your AWS account. So you should do that as soon as you know that your server is compromised. to ensure that further damage does not happen. Also, you can visit this link, which is given by Amazon, on what are the best practices that you should follow while using your AWS resources. There are a lot more methods which you can use to secure your account. What I have talked right now is the very basic. So do not assume that by following these key points, you will be able to secure your account completely. You should always, so this is always a struggle between the hackers and yourself, that the hackers are trying to crack into your server and you are trying to save your server. So it's an ongoing and a very complicated process to ensure that your servers always remain safe. So that's it for AWS. Always remember to keep hackers out of your system, and thank you.